Okay, we are back with another video. Yes, ma'am. We will choose our starting location. So this video is going to be going over the specifics of how to play Supreme Isthmus. Now, I am not as proficient at Supreme Isthmus as I am with glitters, so consider this more of a beginner's guide to the map. And we'll just be going over some of the strategies and concepts that are important to remember with this map, and we're going to be going over the early game, the mid game, and the late game, and things you should try to do with all of those three times in your matches. So you might notice that the starting box is a little bit weird. I didn't get the starting boxes perfect, but it's close enough to what you will be dealing with in an online game. So I hope this helps you guys. So first off, we're going to be starting with air and eco. This is the air position generally, and this is the eco position generally. Now, it's very interesting here. You can see that there's essentially no difference between these two positions on the starting. Like, they all have similar amounts of trees. They all have the metal, second metal further away from them. And it's essentially a carbon copy. Now, what that means is that, honestly, these positions are reversible. You could have eco over here. You could have air over here. It doesn't really matter. So on Supreme Isthmus, air and eco positions are going to be some of the most powerful positions in the game. Air is very important for just obviously covering the sky, right, and making sure there's no Shuris that come and attack the front line. And air is just honestly a mainly support role for those who enjoy to provide just a buff to your team. That's where air really excels. So if you're into that kind of thing, definitely look into playing air. You're gonna be it's a support role for the whole entire team. So I'm not going to get into a ton of details with air, just going over some of the basics, because I honestly am still working on playing air. I'm not the best air player. I'm more of a frontliner or ecoer. So I just don't have the confidence per se to announce like the best plans and everything for air. But essentially what you're going to want is you're going to want a fighter wall built up that will defend against any bombing runs that end up pushing through. And you kind of want to play similar to the eco position in that the larger your economy grows, the more air you will have on the battlefield, and that can help defend against bombing runs and such. You can also end up, after you get better at the air position, you can end up planning bombing runs on the enemy. So you could like push in a group of fighters, kill a bunch of their air and take them out, do bombing runs here, 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 and try to go through as many players as possible, bombing all their bases. And if you get the timing down, you can wipe out an entire team just with airplanes. So that is something that is available to those who are good at that position. Unfortunately, I am not. All right, moving on to the eco position. Now, eco is very important because this is a guaranteed scale position where you can build up larger amounts of units, larger forces, pushing out T3 every couple minutes, things like that. But the problem is you have to capitalize on that eco. So what I mean is if you're just building a bunch of fusion reactors all over the place, aphises, energy converters, and you just scale and scale, and your whole like section gets massively big full of production, that's great. But then you don't have any actual helpful uses coming out of that. You're not pushing forward. You're not protecting your front line at all. You're just building an empire, which is great. But there is a point in time where you have to transition from eco to attack. right? And use all of that income for something beneficial that will keep your team solidly locked down on the front line. This position is what is known as the weak weak naval side, because you have a little bit of a further distance you have to travel in order to get into the water. Whereas on the opposite side here, we'll look at the enemy side. There's 2 players. If you wanted to, you could try to send 2 players in Navy. That might be interesting, actually. I don't know if people have actually tried that or not. But generally, this guy will go up front. So we'll erase that. Anyway, you have your naval player. He has just a couple a little bit of a walk into the water, and he has more mexes out here on the front as well. And usually has a little bit of a better time pushing in with naval and actually taking out any naval progress that is here for your team. So this position, I often see people just don't go Navy at all, and they'll build up as like a second eco, and that works. That can be very helpful. Having a second economy position can get more T3 out, and it can really help put a lot of pressure here. The one danger is if you give this area up too easily, these players on the front here take a huge amount of pressure for it. Just having destroyers right here, if the enemy team has destroyers, they can shell out this whole base and make it so your frontline player is just gone. He can't do anything. So it can be very valuable to try to put pressure on the Navy side. That way your front line doesn't take so much damage from their attacks here. Okay, so that's something to be mindful of. And honestly, you should be trying to push for this location and get these extra mexes that could help you gain an advantage as well. But, you know, understandably so, this is a difficult position to gain the advantage in that side of the sea. This is a support role here, frontline support. They should early game be pushing out units to the front, because if you can take an early advantage on Supreme Isthmus, it will spiral out of control. If you end up taking this base out and this base out, and then even this base out, if you take all 3 of these bases out, they're gonna be hurting really bad. And if you do it early enough, they're not gonna have any real production coming out of these eco positions yet, so they won't really be able to defend it very well. So trying to get past this center point and getting through to the enemy's bases on the other side is huge, obviously, right? But that's not always what this player will do. This player sometimes will go for eco and just try to get T2 out as quickly as possible, and that's a viable option. T2 is a huge boost in what you can do. You know, the front line, you'll have extended range, you'll have extended damage, you'll have sometimes even a little bit faster units, missile trucks, things like that can really put in the hurt on the enemy. So if they end up going eco, the front line needs to be aware of that, because that means they're going to be holding a little bit longer, and it's going to be a little bit harder. Excuse me, still waking up this morning, just had to yawn. Okay, now for if this player does eco, I honestly would recommend a commander bomb, just to use a little bit of that extra metal to try to jumpstart your eco a bit faster. Generally, if you're going to eco, having a comm bomb put into that eco is huge. It gives you a major buff towards your T2. And I'm actually going to be making another video on the fastest timings for eco that I have found. I've gotten it down to 4 minutes 40 seconds, which is pretty good, and that's when my T2 is finished building. So yeah, definitely incorporate a commander explosion if you are trying to eco in this position. That way you can quickly get your T2 up to the front and helping your allies. Another thing to keep in mind is while you are ecoing in this position, you want to be building from here back. Okay, let's actually remove these lines. You want to be building your base back this direction. Okay, now the reason for this is once it gets late game, the naval is going to have larger artillery ships, missile trucks, and they're going to be shelling this whole area to pieces. Like anything in here is going to be exploded. So just be very careful of putting any of your aphises or fusion reactors or energy converters over in the front here, and it's all going to die. And that goes for, unfortunately, the front line too. The front line, like all of this area is going to die for sure late game. Okay, it's all going to be destroyed by missile boats, artillery fire, things like that. So this player, when he's expanding, he needs to try to expand out this way and like come down here and take this area for like his windmills and his energy conversion, things like that, which is a pain in the neck, but it's one of the better ways to keep your base alive. And unfortunately, I always forget to do this. Anyway, so just keep that in mind if you are ecoing in that position. Here, this is really the sacrificial lamb. We'll just call it that. Your base 9 times out of 10 is going to die. Those of you who've played this game a couple times on this map, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The front line position, they're either going to get pushed in from the front line, or they're going to get pushed in from the naval, and there's not much you can do. Not the same for this frontliner. This frontliner has this wall of mountainous terrain here, and that will protect him unless somehow they lose this navy side. If they lose the weak naval side, then they can also get shelled. Honestly, if your team loses your strong naval side, you are going to probably lose the game, because there's a lot of players that rely on victory for that strong naval side. You do not want to lose that. Okay, so yeah, as this player, like I said, try to build most of your production, you know, behind this line if you can, just to try to save it from getting destroyed. If you could even build your factory back there, that might be nice too. It's just a pain in the neck to get it over there. And your goal is honestly early on to get as much of this metal as you can. This metal is, I think there's probably 1,000 here or something. I can't really tell because the game's not launched, but I think it's about 1,000 metal. So having that early metal advantage is huge, and for that reason, a lot of times these players who start up front will go for bot lab, just to have those res bots eating away at that metal early on. It can be valuable just to build like 10, 5-10 grunts and hold this line here until as long as they can, just to get all this metal eaten up first. And it really helps if both of these positions work together to get that metal. That should be a main goal for people when they are in the frontline positions, is let's push together, let's hold the metal, let's take it all, and then we can come back and do a little bit more work on our base, on our production, on our, whatever we're trying to get done, construction bots, etc. This metal is worth fighting over. So this is the weaker frontline, and this is the stronger frontline position. Late game, this weaker frontline position needs to get some plasma deflectors as quick as they can. It's not going to necessarily help against a missile truck, and a lot of times that's what you're going to see hitting you, but a plasma deflector shield will make you sustain a little bit longer than not having it. So try to get that up as soon as possible. This side, don't need a plasma deflector quite as fast, so you get a little bit more breathing room here. Like I said, you get your equally trying to take out this metal and hold the front, you would ideally want to hold at the halfway point or further. And you know, it's a standard frontline position. Unfortunately, with this map, there's not very much you can do as far as rotating or manipulating the terrain to your advantage as a frontliner, so it's a bit of a struggle. One thing we don't really see that much from the front line is trying sneaky plays, and that's something I might try to do in the future. Is maybe you obviously want to coordinate if you're going to be doing this, but maybe going for like a early hover lab or something, building up a bunch of crocodiles coming across the sea and hitting their economy. So something like that. That's obviously a dangerous plan, but it might work. You know, if one of you guys went hover, if one of you guys went hover and pushed in and tried to hit their economy, then you're able to use your terrain to your advantage, and you might see a bit more victory there. But it would be hard to determine whether or not you should do it on early in the game or late, maybe a little bit later on in the game. Those are all different ideas. But yeah, hovercraft could be used a little bit here to try to push up in a way that the team is not expecting to be pushed. So keep that in mind, think about it, try it out. Let me know in the comments if you liked that idea or hated that idea, and I appreciate the feedback. Next we have another support position. This is, you know, it's very similar to this position except for a little bit stronger. You get a geothermal plant here, which on this map the wind speed is pretty high. It's average of 14 wind speed. So I don't know if a geo is necessarily more efficient than the wind on this map, but it is there for those who want it. And you got a bunch of mexes here. You're just going to be either supporting and pushing in with T1 trying to break the front line, which honestly, if all 4 of these players pushed in, you might be able to break the front line early and end up collapsing the whole game in T1, because oftentimes I don't see all 4 of these players pushing in. One of them will eco, one of them will just be, you know, kind of building up and stuff and not really trying to aggress the front. But if all 4 of you pushed in, I bet you could collapse the front line and just dumpster the bases there and then spread throughout the whole map and crush it. So unfortunate that we don't see that enough. I think it could really be useful. So yeah, you have similar concept here. You don't have to worry about being exploded as much. You can basically build wherever you want. Usually this whole naval area is yours to play with, so no big deal. Now we've got the naval position. This is one of the more important positions in the game. I would say this is first, this is second, and this is third as far as importance goes, just because you know, obviously eco has a huge role in your late game. The air has a huge role in whether or not you survive to the late game, and then this has a huge role on how much damage you can inflict on the enemy early on. So this is a very massive position for those who are wanting to play naval. So you're just going to get your couple of mexes here, and then you're going to end up going into the navy as quick as possible. Just basically pushing for all the mexes you can, and then also determining that they did not go navy themselves. If they went navy themselves, you need to push it and crush it and destroy their naval base as quickly as possible. It can be a very large advantage to make sure they are not in that ocean. So just keep that in mind. If you're here, push as quickly as possible and rush your troops up this way to verify they do not have a naval base. And that's essentially it. After you do that, you can just, you know, come over this way and verify, do a little bit of extra damage on their frontliner, try to get some destroyers up in here to shell their bases and just cause harassment over time. And then you're eventually going to want to transition to T2 and get some missile trucks and bombard this whole area as much as you can. just missile that whole section with your missile truck or your missile missile boats. Sorry guys, I cannot speech today. Yeah, you're gonna want to bring your missile boats in here and try to shell the whole front line here, and hopefully pop some aphises, pop some energy converters, and cause a huge explosion. That's what you're aiming for. And aside from that, you can get your capital ship out here and put it maybe right here and start shelling further back as well, and that could be very useful. So yeah, that's about it guys for Supreme Isthmus. I can't think of any other tips for it. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely subscribe and leave a like. That helps out the channel a large amount. We want the community to grow. We want people who are new to bar to find these videos and be able to learn some of these maps quickly, learn different strategies quickly. So that's the goals, guys, and you guys sharing the videos and just helping out with subscribing and liking them is a huge plus to the channel and will help YouTube throw it out to more people. So I really appreciate when you guys do that, and as always, I will see you on the battlefield.